Hello, my usury-free Jubilee TV viewers. We're kicking off the show right now with a video. So yeah, that is pretty darn powerful of a testimony right there. When you know what your why is, your what becomes very simple. And the why for the Jubilee TV show is to emancipate humanity. And we're pleased to be joined by the great Henry Garman. And we're going to be joined also by Corey Peterson, who's going to be talking about self-issued currency. But first in the show is have Henry do a presentation on how there's a big deception going on, part of the Babylonian confusion in the Matrix, as Putin is supposed to be this valiant Christian because he's killing ISIS and thereby protecting the Christians in the Middle East. It's a big psyop. So that's what we're going to be talking about in the show tonight. And I'm going to kick off our intro to the show as I've said before, we don't have a producer, so I just got to kind of muddle through the buttons here myself. And it is right there. And this is from Luke 4:19, where Jesus proclaims Jubilee. And all right, that song gets me fired up every time I hear it. Just as a little backstory behind that, there is a website called Fiverr.com. All right, and this is very relevant to this entire mission of ours on Jubilee TV. There's a website called Fiverr.com, and I wanted somebody to basically make a song about Luke 4:19, where Jesus proclaims Jubilee. And on Fiverr.com, you can hire people for basically like a $5 fee to do, all sorts of creative things. People will sing songs. They'll do voiceovers. They'll do videos. They'll make websites. They'll make logos. Just all kinds of different stuff. And literally, it kind of explains the political paradigm that exists in the world right now, because in that paradigm, when you go to hire somebody, you have the money, right? And you can write a script, and those people on that website, because they need money, they'll say whatever you want. It's like the guy that just sang the song, I don't know if he's Christian or not, but he sure can sing. So the point is that the politicians and the talking heads that we see on TV, they do the same thing. They want money, so they basically recite the lines of the powered elite, or the money lenders, as it's said in the Bible. They prostitute themselves. They prostitute their souls and their bodies in order to make Federal Reserve notes. In the exact same way that Judas prostituted his soul, he sold his soul and sold out Jesus for 30 pieces of silver. So that's what it means to have a usury-based money system. A usury-free money system means you can issue the money yourself, so there's no reason to sell your soul, because the money is actually backed up by your own soul power. So it's a complete paradigm shift. So it's a bit difficult to explain that to people, because it's so completely different than what people have been used to, because we've all been raised in Babylon. But when the mission of this show is to explain how we've been deceived, and if you realize our ancient ancestors suffered from the same sort of servitude as we do, we can learn their lessons and go back in history and emancipate ourselves. And even if you're not a believer, that's okay. Just view the Bible as a history book and take the history lessons and use the examples from it. And I'm going to share my screen here with the PowerPoint, which is basically a review of basically our whole mission here. I've got to scoot around and bust that out. Here we go. Bear with me. There it is. It's basically the mission of Jubilee TV. Got to share my whole screen. I hope everybody can see this. We don't have a huge budget, so we got to make do with what we got. And here we go. Mission. to fulfill the Creator's love revolution prophecy, regather the lost tribes and mixed multitudes, then release captives through Jubilee Exodus and usury-free monetary reform. So this image, if there's one image that can kind of express the whole paradigm that humanity lives in, I just had a son, and he is my perfect little boy. So he hasn't been confused in Babylon yet. That's why Jesus literally says, in order to enter the kingdom of heaven, you must regain the mind of a child. So the stallion on the right, he was, born in the wild, and he's free, and he hasn't been broken. He hasn't been domesticated. And that's what living in Babylon does, is it domesticates us. And to a point where we've been suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. All of us have been abused in Babylon, where we've been taught that we're deficient, that we don't have the right clothes, we don't have the right cars, we don't look right, we need to have plastic surgery, we were not educated properly in the right schools, we don't belong to the right clubs. So over time, we become domesticated, just like the horse that is on the left. However, our Creator keeps trying to speak to us, telling us that, no, we're really the horse on the right. We are designed for great things. So the other part of the Babylonian confusion is that it teaches us Babylon's ways to have a revolution. And those ideas is, how is the best way to release captives? So if we watch the dominant culture, it says that we should vote, or we should protest. We should have a violent revolution like the American Revolution. We could have, if you listen to Alex Jones, it's survivalism, it's bunkers and bullets and guns and gold and silver and fear and living off grid. And then the other choice is taking the blue pill, where you just live in denial and apathy. But our Creator, he has a plan. It's called the perfect law of liberty, and that's the usury-free Jubilee monetary reform, and that's what we teach here. And we're going to be conscious, whether you want to be a Christian or not, it doesn't matter, all right? But we want everybody to leave Babylonian captivity. And here's a consciousness analogy made to a car repair, because everybody's had a car get fixed, right? So you know how it works. You first need someone to properly diagnose the problem. Extremely important. Because let's say it's your neighbor, and you ask him, because he's cheap, he tells you, he gives you some free advice, but he gives you the wrong advice, and you pay for the wrong part. So anyway, you need research. That means you want to rely upon the expertise of those who have fixed cars before. You want to rely upon those in the owner's manual. The people who created the car, the manufacturer of the car, they certainly know how it works. The historic people who have repaired that car before. Then finally, once you know that, then you start to work on the car or heal the car from its sickness. Finally, once it's repaired, you need to maintain it over time so that it stays without getting broken again. Well, going back over to the lower right, literally humanity is walking off a cliff. We're self-destructing individually with addictions and prescription medicines from big pharma and poisonous food and poisonous water and poisonous air. Everything literally is poison that enters our body from Babylon. So we're committing self-destruction, most importantly, from a toxic currency. Well, to look for the solution, we should look in our owner's manual. Our Creator gave us an owner's manual, and it has historic lessons of our ancient ancestors who suffered from captivity from earthly gods as we do today. Well, the Bible shows it, and this process is a rebirth. And you talk to so many people where they say, I've been reborn, I'm a reborn Christian, and they just means they believe Jesus. Well, that's not what it really means. What it really, really means is sort of like in the Matrix movie or the Avatar movie, the protagonist, Neo, or in the Avatar movie, the Marine, he went through a spiritual rebirth where he realized he was working and he was serving a team which was destroying the natural order. So in the Matrix movies, they were trying to turn everybody into machines. And Neo realized that he was actually serving a system which wanted to eradicate humanity. The indigenous in Avatar were being eradicated by the human beings that came there for unobtainium. And he realized, the Marine, that he had more in common with the indigenous. So he had a soul change, a spiritual rebirth, where he decided that he was going to resist and defeat the very system which was trying to destroy the natural order. So that's what that means. And then finally, maintenance is prayer. So here's our problem with humanity. There's a game set up here in Babylon. It's called Monopoly. And the short rule of the game is there's one player named the banker, and he wins. That's the short game for the whole story, is that the banker wins in this game. So as long as we play within the rules of this game of voting and protesting and just posting on Facebook, we will always be ruled by mammon instead of serving our creator and our highest potential. And what's really difficult to believe is that you have this old book, the Bible, going back 3,500 years, and it gave us a set of rules. When the ancient Israelites who were enslaved in Egypt, literally it shows you on the back of a dollar bill, they had today we have these same symbols. You have a pyramid on the dollar bill, you have an obelisk in Washington, you have a bull in Wall Street. They're showing that history repeats. There's nothing new under the sun. So our creator said, "Thou shalt not be to him as a usurer" in Exodus. So the Israelites left Egypt and they wrote down rules. They were bondservants to Pharaoh, to earthly gods, and God gave them some rules. Say, if you listen to these rules, you won't go back into captivity. But if you disobey these rules, you're going to be cursed. So in Deuteronomy, God said, this is the curse. This is what happens to you. The alien among you shall rise higher and higher, but you will go down lower and lower. He shall lend to you. Did you hear that? He shall lend to you, but you will not lend to him. He shall be the head, and you will be the tail. Now it says you will be the tail. That means even if there's, on planet Earth, there's 7 billion of us. Even if there's 7.9 billion of us or whatever, and there's 100 money lenders, as long as we're borrowing from the money lenders, we're participating usury. We're serving Babylon. We're serving the Pharaoh. We're serving Mammon. We're serving the den of thieves instead of God. That means we're going to be usurped. Our governments will be usurped. Our corporations will be usurped. Everything is going to be usurped. God warned us. Here's the rules. You break the rules, things go wrong. So here's the cycle of Jubilee releases. So if you look on the far left middle, it says obedience and disobedience. In the beginning, there was the Garden of Eden. Man was in paradise. And God said, don't eat the apple. And the snake said it was okay. The snake actually represents usury and the devil. The devil and usury are nearly identical intentions. So when there was disobedience in Eden, there was the fall. Adam and Eve fell, right? So they went into captivity. Now starting over now we're moving forward in the Egyptian slavery. When the Israelites in captivity, when they were obedient to God, they literally had to paint, this is symbolic, they had to paint their doorways with the blood of the Passover lamb. That's important to remember because it actually reappears all the way in Revelation, because there's nothing new under the sun. We're going to do the exact same thing. So when they were obedient and they listened to the God, whoever painted their door, they were saved. And then they were obedient to God. They had the Exodus, right? Then they went on to the promised land. Over time, they became disobedient. When they became disobedient, they went into Babylonian and Assyrian captivity. The 12 tribes of Israel split up. 2 tribes went to the south, 10 tribes went to the north. The northern 10 tribes got dispersed throughout the world, and they became the lost tribes that Jesus came for. Jesus, in fact, said the quote, "I have not come except for the lost tribes of the house of Israel." When all of us rise up, the people on this call, the people listening to this, hearing my voice right now, even though if you're not a Christian, the Creator is calling you. You're part of those lost tribes because your soul is offended by Babylon. Your soul is offended by what's going on planet Earth right now. Your soul is offended because it's not dignified, and we demand to be living in a more noble life. So today in Revelation, when you look in fact, at the time of Jesus, they were in disobedience because the scribes and Pharisees were not obeying the laws of Moses. They were in captivity, and that's why the moneylenders and the scribes and the Pharisees and King Herod, they were actually all Edomites, by the way. They weren't Israelites. Anyway, moving forward all the way to Mystery Babylon today, if you look in the book of Revelation, it says we're in Mystery Babylon. It's the mother of all harlots, prostitutes. So in order to get out of Mystery Babylon, we need to become obedient, and then we will go on to the kingdom of heaven. That's what it says when it says repent, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Repent means stop sinning. What is sin? Sin is transgression of the law. How are we being sinful? We're serving the mammon instead of God. We're participating in usury. All right. And part of the way that we have, we're suffering from the curse of the moneylenders, right? Because we're serving mammon. Well, what happens is the usurers are able to finance. They have unlimited money in order to finance a proxy war. So every different group, every ism, like communism, capitalism, fascism, socialism, every ism that you can think of, all of them are financed by usury. Because regardless of which one of those isms you pick, including anarchism, if you pick any of those isms, those at the top leadership is financed by usury. Capitalism, the capitalists are all financed by usury, right? The leadership, well, the communists during the Soviet Revolution, they were all financed by usury. So it creates this constant divide and conquer strategy. All right, so to leave this paradigm, to return to obedience to the Father, in His law, we live in His house, of course, we should follow the Father's law. We have the 144K Exodus Jubilee benefits. So, we want to pitch this. We're literally selling this because we want you to join the 144K movement. Yeah, because this is the only plan that will cure what is destroying humanity. Remember, the Creator created the planet, and He created us. He created all humanity. He created everything that is or ever will be. Therefore, the Creator knows how to heal us. And if we do something that's in rebellion to the Creator, we're going to suffer from the curses, right? So anyway, number one, we're going to peacefully release debt slaves and beat the banksters with a tiny minority. The tipping point's 144,000. Everybody's going to follow us out of Babylon. We, in the Bible, it actually calls it the wheat or the elect. Everybody's going to come through. It's not meaning 144 only will be saved. We're going to save all humanity and turn this planet into the kingdom of heaven, a voluntary society. So number two, we need a new story. And the hero story, remember I was using that analogy of Avatar and the Matrix. There's a hero story, and all of us are going to go through this hero story where we decide that we're no longer going to serve these earthly gods. And this story of Exodus and Jubilee is understood by half the population on the planet. and 70% of the US population. Think of Bob Marley music, Exodus, movement of the people, right? We already got theme songs lined up. Like this story, once people have the consciousness of of a Henry Garman or a Corey Peterson, once humanity has that level of consciousness, Babylon is done. It is done. Like, I mean, in consciousness happens fast. Like, we can do this in less than a year. Get excited, people. This is where this is the real happy hour, right? The real happy hour. All right, number 3, we're inviting Jews, Christians, Muslims, Rastafarians, Buddhists, Hindus, believers and non-believers, the assorted multitudes. Everybody can leave Babylonian captivity. We don't have to be slaves to, just like the Pharaoh. They left Egypt and they became independent, and that's what we're going to do. Number 4, prophecy is fulfilled with spiritual revolution and emancipation from captivity in Babylon. So we're not talking about just your debts are forgiven. We're talking about a complete spiritual revolution where our highest potential, all of us on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, there's something where you become self-actualized, like you work in the vocation of your passion. And then when a group of people do that, then there's peak experiences. That's what we're talking about, is like the super pole of spirituality and awesomeness. That's what the Jubilee is. Number 5, this initiative promotes a voluntary society where there are no rulers other than our Creator. It's important to remember that in the Bible, God warned in, I believe it's 2 Samuel, that there should be no kings, because once you have a king, the king's going to start oppressing you. Number 6, this ain't for everybody, but I'm in Colorado and I can't express how great that cannabis is used to create a one love consciousness and direct revelation with our Creator. Cannabis is a spiritual sacrament to have direct revelation with the Creator, and it's condoned by the Bible. It's the cannabis of Exodus. Number 7, money and land monopoly is broken. 100% debt forgiveness, usury-free, self-issued monetary reform, and a land inheritance for all, baby, because that's the promise of our Creator. So I need to get a little technical here, because we get into monetary reform, and because the primary control of Babylon is through the money, monetary control and monopolization of money. Well, here's the deception breaker. Everybody should recognize that money originated from trade, all right? Well, before there was money, people just bartered, right? You just traded. There was no money. Well, we're starting there. 1 barter equals 2 IOUs. So the person on the left asks the question, will you trade your 15 ounces of silver for my 1 ounce of gold? Person on the right says, okay, I'll do it. That's a fair exchange. So the man on the left, sorry, we got some background noise. I'll speak louder. The man on the left issues an IOU for 1 ounce of gold. The woman on the right is going to issue, she's going to write a piece of paper that I owe you 15 ounces of silver. They then trade those 2 IOUs. So each of them are looking at it, say, okay, man on the left says, hey, woman, you owe me 15 ounces of silver. So he redeems his IOU, and then she gives him the silver, shown on the left. She does the same thing. Both parties get what they want. So the lesson here is that the IOUs were the money. The gold and silver were the commodities. The reason being is we can have thousands of trades and barters, and we never need gold and silver to do it. The IOUs allow us to open up more opportunities, because right now I don't have enough Federal Reserve notes, but I can trade with people. So trade should never be limited by scarce money. So please read, all of this is a short recap of the 144K Manifesto, and you can get that on the links at usuryistheroot.com. And please join the 144K Facebook site. We are literally counting our numbers there. We only have, and there's an expression that says if you want to really be serious about anything, you have to measure it. Well, we want to measure our growth of the 144K here. So our weekly views of Jubilee TV, it averages in a week right about 80. About 80 people watch our show in the rerun. Then last week we had roughly 160 people, and then a week later, by the way, 10/2, that's the birth of my little baby boy, we had 181. So we had an increase of 21. All right. So we only have right now 181 people down with the revolution, even though this is the only. And by the way, there's 144,000 people on planet Earth that totally dig what we're talking about right now. They are in, like yesterday. They are in. They're just the lower you go down the economic strata, the more people are really searching for this answer. So please bring people to our Facebook fan page. Here are some things you can help out. Share the link of our Facebook, the Kingdom platform. Number 2, it's email out this link each week, Twitter it, everything you can do to spread the message, because the quicker everybody has this level of consciousness, we win. And this is an important message, because some people go, you know what, you ain't going to do it, you ain't going to beat Babylon. Well, I'll tell you what, the entire message and point of the Bible is that the giant in front of you is never bigger than the God who lives inside of you. And what that really means is, in the allegory of David versus Goliath, right? Little guy David versus the giant Goliath. David won. And it's not because of what David did. David's skill. It was that David listened to God. Therefore, Goliath was fighting David. So here I'm back. Let me stop screen sharing and pick up. Okay, we got Corey. I'm going to flip this around. We had Corey lined up first, so I'm going to go with that for his presentation. Hey, Corey, you good to go?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Maybe a hair a bit loud.
Oh, sorry. I was just adjusting my settings here.
Okay, a hair a bit loud. Maybe down 10%, please.
Let's see. How do I do that? Go to the Hangout toolbox.
Am
I getting quieter?
You can maybe back away from your screen a little bit. There you go. Just get centered a little bit. If you look, okay. There you go.
Am I quieter now?
No, that's good. You've got that military command voice. I'm digging on it. And I had a little intro for Corey, and I'm dialing it up right now. It's Corey's former military, and just like as we were telling the story about once you leave Babylon, you have a So what the story is there is those are former they're veterans in Washington D.C. and they're marching in formation because they've become awakened to the fact that the bankers control the government, and that is demonstrated just by the simple idea in the Bible. It says borrower is servant to the lender. Borrower, the United States government, is the borrower to the Federal Reserve. So the borrower, the United States and the military and all of those institutions have been usurped. And that aligns up exactly what we said earlier with the curse of the moneylenders. And Corey has a presentation talking about self-issued currency. Because if we issue the money ourselves, why would we ever have to borrow from the money lenders? So Corey, you can take it away.
Okay. Well, again, just to make sure you can hear me, my volume's right.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. And I have the presentation open. Can you see it now?
It's not screen shared yet. I can't see it.
It's all blue. Sorry about this. I know I'm late, and I was supposed to have this bug worked out before we started.
This will be, if you go onto your top left and you have the green button for screen share of Google.
Mm-hmm.
You see that?
Yes.
So you just click on that.
Okay. I think I got it. Do I got it?
Yep, we see it. My house, my rules. If you don't like it, you can move out.
Yeah, okay. Well, here I go then. Am I full screen and perfect here?
Yep, you're good to go.
Okay. Well, I came up with this title. I was just trying to think of a good way to present this in a nice, clear way, and I thought of this as an analogy because, oh, well, let me go to the next slide. My house, my rules. Did you ever consider that this saying applies to you if you are depending on a currency system which is owned and controlled and issued by someone else? Most people just think of that as in terms of an actual real house, and they think of it as a parent maybe speaking to their kid. Well, this presentation uses an analogy to describe how being dependent on someone else's currency system is similar to living in someone else's house. So, huh?
Yeah, I like that. I was thinking, if you think of the currency system as like an electrical circuit, if you think that electrical circuit is like someone else's house, whoever created the circuit or whoever created the house, that system, you have to be, you're sovereign, you're subject to the creator of that system.
Yep. And I think most people, when they say that statement, they don't think anyone's ever going to actually move out. Like a parent says it to their kid, they think that's the end of the conversation. And I think the same thing applies to currency. If you say to someone, I'm going to start my own currency, most people just kind of roll their eyes like, yeah, right. So, what I've been studying since I met Wayne is basically how to go ahead and do that. How do we move out? And that's the point of this presentation, is to demonstrate that you're actually living in someone else's house, number one. Number two, convince you that it's worth your time to move, and three, tell you how to move. So before we get into that, I'm going to give a little bit about my background. So reasons why I care. Number one, I'm a human being. Number two, I'm a veteran. I took an oath to support and defend the Constitution, and this is no small project. This is going to take everyone's help. And now that I've discovered this threat, I feel a duty to warn everyone, try to prevent World War III, and try to develop an alternative. And ideally, I can do all three at the same time. So that's what we're trying to do here tonight, I think. And a little bit more of my recent history. How I really got fired up. I was kind of dormant from politics for about 15 years. I was in college and I was very excited to be involved in politics. I got an internship at the state capitol. I joined the College Democrats. I went to Washington, D.C. for a semester and studied international trade. And I joined ROTC, and I was comparing the government, ROTC, and the military versus international trade, and I was learning about trade from sources right in Washington, D.C., and I was really excited about it all. I left the Air Force to run my friend's campaign for office, and when that was over, I thought, there's something wrong here. I don't know what it is, but I'm leaving politics. And I sat dormant, basically, for about 15 years. And when I saw this media bias video about Ron Paul, you can find it on YouTube, I thought something is definitely wrong here. That is not right. I don't know who Ron Paul is, but I'm going to start investigating. So that's what I started to do. And that led me to this documentary called The Money Masters. Ron Paul has a book called End the Fed, and I thought, well, what's that got to do with anything? And I watched the Money Masters, and I started thinking, oh, this is a big problem. And that led me to watching this video, Veterans March on DC, that Wayne just referred to. And I thought, oh, and then I learned about this Paul Fest going on in conjunction with the Republican National Convention. And I thought, I've got to get down there. I've got to get down there, and I've got to meet these guys, and I've got to see if this is for real. I got to meet these people and see them face to face, eye to eye. And that's where I met Wayne Walton. And we went on this Veterans March. You can see a picture of it there. That's me in the yellow. And we were marching to, we decided to kind of go outside the norm, go outside the system and raise some money for a local shelter, homeless shelter that was taking care of veterans who had been displaced by the RNC. So we did this walk, and on that walk, I spent about 3 hours talking with Wayne Walton. And he told me all about ours, and basically I was sold after that. I was like, that's where I got to go. When I leave Tampa, my mission is to now research currency and how to reform currency. And that's what led me to where we are here tonight. Any questions so far? I feel like I'm talking super fast here.
No, we'll just do the questions at the end, and I'll kind of line them up through the text, Corey.
Okay. Well, here's the outline then of this analogy I came up with. One, we're going to talk about the house. Two, we're going to talk about preparing to move out, steps people go through. And basically what I'm doing, I'm defining it as a preparation, because until you move out, you're really just preparing. You're in a state of preparation. Two, moving out. There's steps. There's certain degrees you can go to. And three, how do you stay out? How do you stay moved out? So first, who owns this house? Well, there's a loosely defined term called the world financial system, which for this analogy will represent the house. Its owners will be referred to as mom and dad. Ownership is secretive and subject of debate. Whoever it is, we can see what their goals are. And it's probably not you, which is all that really matters for this presentation. A lot of people like to get sidetracked or discredit the whole argument based on, they say, well, if you don't know who owns it, your whole argument is invalid. I say, no, it doesn't really matter. You know it's not you. Let me just, I don't know if you can read this. I'll zoom in on this. One day I was sitting around and I was thinking, how do you show this to people in a visual way? Who owns the house? You see Jafar here. He obviously is the man in charge in this picture. And he represents the Federal Reserve, IMF, World Bank, Wall Street banks. If you want to put those in one category, you call them the currency issuers and large corporations. So let's go back. And what's he holding in his hand? Power to create currency. And the President, Congress, Supreme Court, all these public, visible people who the public is led to believe is in charge of running the show, they're really not. Like Jafar here is saying, as long as I hold the lamp, your votes mean nothing. Muha'a. And then of course, Jafar and the currency issuers have their tools to help them. The sword here represents tools of force, enforcers. IRS, FBI, Secret Service. And then this little staff that Jafar uses, something he used to mesmerize people and distract them and confuse them. And I call that mainstream media, CIA, economic hitmen, public schools. Now, is that all 100% accurate? Well, that's probably a subject of another debate. But you don't see the issuers of currency coming out and defending themselves. So that tells me that, yeah, they're secretive, and they don't want to come out and defend themselves. Why should they? They hold the lamp. Next, how is the house managed? House is managed with a sister system called usury. Key to understanding usury is to understand that dollars are created out of thin air. I get a lot of people, they want to argue about, if usury is interest, and interest, they want to argue about whether interest is evil or not. And what I think most people believe is that everyone who has any money to lend earned it, and they worked for it somehow. And that's the premise that seems to throw off a lot of conversations. So when I ask them, if you wrote $1 million on a piece of paper and it actually became $1 million, and you didn't have to back it, You would have unlimited power over those who value dollars. Basically, you could just keep creating more until you got them to do what you wanted them to do. Borrowing a dollar from an issuer of a dollar is different than borrowing a dollar from someone who worked for it. The issuer did not have to work for it. The issuer just had to write it down or type it in. So issuers of dollars today do not back what they issue. So they can pretty much issue as much as they want with no consequences to themselves. Now, if you think for a minute, what kind of power does that give a person? They just keep creating more until they get what they want. Well, they're going to get everything they want. Characteristics. And this is based on a chart that Wayne has distributed. He had it down as 7 reasons usury is evil. And I just tweaked it a little bit, called characteristics of usury. But theft is a big one. Theft through inflation and counterfeiting. And the picture on the right complements that statement. Give a man a gun and he can rob a bank. Give a man a bank and he can rob the world. And that's what they're doing. That's what they've done. And since they've got all the money, they can usurp government. They can control everything. Wealth transfer. There's a constant shift of them taking your money and giving it to themselves. Parasitism. It's like the idea of that they're basically making money without doing work. They're making money just by giving it to you. Lending it to you. Debt slavery. Keep you trying to pay off your debts for your whole life. And defaults. Musical chairs. And this is a big one because in the way they issue money, they purposely make it scarce, which means there's not enough for everybody. And so there's guaranteed to be people who don't get a chair every once in a while. And what that does is it creates a very fierce set of competition amongst people who cannot create their own currency. So as long as you depend on their currency system, you live in their house, and you are managed and enslaved with usury. And you see on the left the guy running on a hamster wheel. People, they call that the rat race, and they can never get ahead for some reason, and nobody seems to understand, and they think it's just the facts of life or something. It's not. It's a system by design. And then on the right is usury, and these are people playing musical chairs. So what are the living conditions in a state of usury? What usury ends up doing is it keeps you in the bottom 2 levels of Maslow's hierarchy. And think about it. How many people are just struggling day to day to survive, working several jobs and never seem to have enough? And if they get lucky, they get ahead a little bit, but they're still basically working on their comfort. They're trying to keep their car running nicely and keep their home painted, keep their grass mowed, and that's where they spend most of their whole life. Almost everybody I know. How many people do you know that get together and talk about their experiences of self-actualization? I don't know anybody, and I think if I brought that up, everybody would look at each other and just think I was insane. So you may, in this, when you're at the bottom 2 levels, you see a lot of experiences in competition. Everybody's trying to get a job, steal jobs. You got a good idea, they want to steal it. So competition, you got stress, you got debt, hunger, fear, jail, war. People say that, oh yeah, the poor people fight the wars. And nobody seems to really know why. Why is that? Well, it's because of usury. Just like this question that, I just blanked on his name. This guy said, why can't we all just get along?
Rodney
King.
Yeah.
Sorry, I knew his name when I looked it up, and I just blanked on it now. But he's famous for this line, why can't we all just get along? Well, what did most people do? They all laughed when he said it and started making fun of him, but nobody answered his question. So I feel like I've got the answer to his question. We can't get along because of usury. Because usury encourages us to be mean to others and encourages others to be mean to you. Encourages everyone to trash the environment, and it turns the whole world into a big gladiator pit. The hardest worker, the toughest people are the ones who get ahead, is the, the general idea. And it doesn't need to be that way. It's just the way it is. And most people don't understand why it's that way. So I'm saying it's because of usury. So let's say you get tired of it and you're preparing to move out. Now there's historical examples of this. And what most people do is they want to operate what I call in-house. So they try active in-house solutions. And those include protests, petitions, campaigns, voting. Call your congressman, everybody says. So like your congressman's going to get your phone call and, boy, we're going to have changes tomorrow morning. You know it doesn't happen. Some people get really fired up and they run for office. And everybody knows that the chances of a non-incumbent winning is dismal. So those in-house solutions don't really seem to do much. Then you go on to another passive solution. Some people just go straight to the passive, and they just buy and sell off the books, and they feel like a rebel, a secret rebel, and they want to keep, their strategy is to keep quiet and let the active people take heat. And what does that get them? They're still living in the house under usury, so they're not going to break out of anything living that way. So after someone's exhausted all these ideas, they might say, you know what? It's time for me to actually move out. So we got examples of that. What I call first degree being basically the weakest form, and I use the analogy to extend that to like kids moving into the backyard. And this is the equivalent of any struggle with no monetary or currency system. They're going to just keep using the currency of the system they're trying to leave. So they might get out of the house for a short time, but they're destined to come back inside when it rains or gets cold. And I, of course, use that logo that you see there. There's other logos I could have used. I could have used a Tea Party. And I was actually thinking and wondering if perhaps the hippie movement applies here. People get fired up, and they all say they're going to do something, and then they don't switch currencies, and then slowly over time they just all kind of disappear, and it fades away. And I feel that's what's happening right now with this, with the Ron Paul revolution and the Tea Party movement. I feel it's been corrupted and infiltrated, and the honest people are basically fading away. Second degree, which I call renting. This is a struggle which creates its own currency, but over time loses control to hostile takeover by the world financial system. And the characteristic of that is it feels like you moved out, but then mom and dad basically take over the building and become your landlord again. And you see the picture below, that's the Federal Reserve, and 1913 was the year it was created. And that says crime scene, do not cross. Well, the idea here is that the United States declared independence, but slowly we've lost control. It lost control of its currency supply, and basically we're not in control of the people that live there. People of the United States do not control the United States currency anymore. So they're basically it's like they've moved back into the house of the same people they declared independence from. Third degree, move into the neighbor's house. And this is any group which looks to be saved by another homeowner / currency issuer. Seems great until the owner, it seems great until the owner turns bad or sells out to mom and dad. So I got a picture there, and this was a picture I found online. I typed into a search for other countries welcoming the Nazis and Hitler. And this is a picture which claimed to be from the Sudetenland. So there was countries, and I know this happened to the Baltic states, I think it happened in Poland, where people were like happy to see Hitler arrive. And after a couple of years, they were happy to see the Soviets chase the Nazis out. And then after the communists came in, they weren't happy with the communists anymore. So they got basically passed around from house to house. And that's what happens when you don't own your own house, so to speak. So how do you move out and stay out? And that is what I call the fourth degree. You got to own your own house. Issuing currency and maintaining control of it is the only way to own your own house and escape usury. So some people, you might live in the United States and you got control of the land, but if you're not using independent sovereign currency, you're really not in control of your land. So it's an illusion. And the same goes for a lot of things that people use as proof that they're living in a free and independent country. So if you've got a political majority, oh yeah, we're going to get the Republicans are going to take over the House this year and we're going to fix this country. Well, not if you're not switching currency, you're not going to. And having a different name and a language, oh, we speak English here in the U.S., so that makes us free and independent. No, it doesn't. It doesn't matter. People who issue currency don't care what language you speak, as long as you're using their currency. Having a different flag and a song, it's all illusion. Until you issue and control your own currency, you do not own your own house and you do not make any rules. So how do you choose your own currency? I see some efforts going around. People often talk about Bitcoin. Oh, every time I talk about alternative currency, usually the common response is, oh, like Bitcoin? Okay, so let's examine. You got to ask some questions before you go jumping into a new currency. Do you have the power to issue more of it? If no, then it's not your currency, aka not your house. Do you control its value? If no, then it's not your currency. Does the issuer back it? If no, then you are in fact the one backing it. By accepting it, you are giving the issuer and or the system control over you. Basically what that equates to is you're returning from the backyard. Couldn't make it on your own. Okay? You got a little cold and you ran back inside. Do you have to register? Do you have to get yourself on a list? If yes, then it is centrally administrated. Central administration is subject to hostile takeover. Mom and dad can become your landlords again. There are some systems out there where, at the moment, they have not been taken over, but they could be. So if anybody out there is in a system like that, I advise you to just be aware and be cautious. And if it does get taken over, it might be the time you want to get out of it. Are your transactions recorded? If yes, then it is centrally administrated, and the same consequences might happen as above. Mom and dad could take it over. Does it require an electronic device? If yes, then you become dependent on that device, and thereby dependent on whoever provides you that device. And basically that's another opportunity for mom and dad to come and become your landlord again. So ultimately what I'm saying here is that self-issued, self-backed currency is the solution, because a characteristic of self-issued, self-backed is that it becomes valid. It becomes valid with the signature of the individual issuing and backing it, and that's you. So you can do everything with self-issued, self-backed currency that I described in the previous couple charts there, all these questions. You can issue more, you can control its value, you can back it, there's no registration, no recording transactions, and no electronic devices. You can voluntarily sell and trade them for dollars if you want to. You can trade them, sell them for anyone else's self-issued, self-backed currency. So you've got options and it's flexible. You can create more at any time, which means you can instantly keep up with the inflation of the dollar. Some people are worried about, they call the dollar crash and a hyperinflation. So if your sandwich you want to buy today costs $5 and tomorrow it costs $50 and you can't create currency, you're going to have to wait until basically somebody else pumps a whole lot more dollars into the system so you can go get that sandwich. But if you've got the ability to issue your own currency, you can issue it immediately. You can go to the store, see that it's now $50, pull your currency out of your pocket, and basically sign as much as it takes to get you that sandwich immediately. So that gives you it basically empowers you a great deal. And ultimately, what this system does is it puts value on you. Nothing else, nobody else, not your country, not your society, not a computer, nothing, just you. So I'm going to wrap it up here with this is basically my conclusion. key points to remember. If you don't create your own currency, you live in someone else's house. The world financial system manages with usury, and usury sucks. Complaining in-house is a waste of time. Moving out with the wrong currency is the same as not moving out at all. And you can move out permanently just by switching to a currency like ours and or market stamps. And that's all I got. That concludes my briefing, and I'll take questions now, or whatever you want to go with this, Wayne.
All right, sounds good. I'm going to show a quick video while while we get ready for questions. And here. All right, so that clip, that's from the movie Network, and Mr. Beale was the guy that went on the rant on TV in the movie, and basically he was on TV, he was a news broadcaster, and he's basically just said everything is corrupt, and he basically decided to reveal to the people they should stop listening to the TV for their source of truth. Well, that was his boss, who was telling him that how he was breaking the rules of the world, and the rule that there are no governments, there's no nations. It's just one giant bank colony, and that's what Corey was alluding to. And the only way to get out of that bank colony is to issue your own money. And I'll bring Corey back on. Had you seen that clip before, Corey?
I have seen it. Yes, I love it.
Yeah, it's amazing. They tell us. How they tell us in movies the truth in little bits. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just interesting. I wanted to bring Henry on and see if he had any questions for you. This is the great Henry Garman, the writer of Run with the Vision, an expert in Bible economics and specifically the Jubilee. Did you have any questions for Corey? Hold on, Corey. Henry, there you go.
Okay. So you mentioned our money, and then another. What was the name? What was the notes or the market
stamps?
Stamps.
Market stamps. So how does that differ from our money?
Well, there's a couple small differences. Mostly that market stamps are not based on any kind of geographic area. They're centered around the person issuing them. That's number one. Number two, they're not centrally printed, so they're not going to all look exactly the same. And the reason why that even exists is because I'm from Minnesota, but I don't live in Minnesota now, and I wanted to promote a currency. I wanted to promote a currency in Minnesota, and I found it very, very difficult if I'm not living there. So I thought I need to kind of do a tweak on this that will make it not based on where I live necessarily. So those are the two big differences. But other than that, it works basically the same. It becomes valid with the signature of the issuer, and the issuer states what it's good for, what it's redeemable for.
Okay, so basically, if I'm producing something, I could produce like a coupon or a stamp, and then that could circulate. If people wanted to redeem it, I would redeem it. If not, they could trade it among themselves. Is that the idea?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It really alludes back to the chicken note video that we show. The chicken note, eventually, just think in your community. A good way to think about it is that we can relate to. Think of when an airline issues an airline voucher for a free flight. That's an IOU. And if let's say for instance I wanted to go to the local restaurant and I had a voucher for a free airline ticket, right? And I was tomorrow we're going to have a birthday party or a shower that got postponed last week for my son, and let's say I wanted to cater that. So I went to the local restaurant and I have a voucher, like, man, I don't have any money, but I do have this airline voucher for a free flight, and those are typically worth like $200 or $300, and let's say the catering was $200 or $300. Well, that IOU or a market stamp, it wasn't my own, but it was from the airline. So I'm just trying to make it simple so that people could relate to it. What do you think of that, Corey?
Yeah, I think it's accurate, except for the airlines go to a step. They don't let you transfer it to other people. But with a market stamp, basically, I would let people transfer it to other people, and I think airlines do that for a reason. I think they don't want people transferring it because they don't want them to use it as currency. But I do. I want people to transfer mine. I want them to share it all over town.
Yep. I think one of the things I appreciate when when a veteran like Corey tells his story, it was analogous to, again, that same story with Neo in the Matrix, with the Marine in Avatar, or in the movie Dances with Wolves. The protagonist, he grew up in a system, and he realized at some point where he just saw the corruption of the system, and it offended his soul. His soul had a rebirth and went like, there's that saying from Henry David Thoreau, there is, for every 1,000 hacking at the branches of evil, there's one who strikes the root. And that's what Jesus did. Jesus struck the root. He was trying to show you the root of the evil. It even says in the Bible, the love of money is the root of all evil. The love of money is usury. And that's the story that Corey went through, and Henry and myself, and that's the real story that's going to happen. That's part of the Jubilee process, where you shed your own old soul, you shake loose of all of the lies of Babylon, and you have a rebirth. So that's that's the idea of how all of us are going to go through. That's what the entire Jubilee message is. It's the whole rebirth of humanity. So I thank you for sharing that story, Corey. Okay, we have
interesting analogy.
I was kind of thinking, I was worried that you guys were going to just hammer me after that and just say I was wrong on this point or that point. So I'm feeling pretty good right now. That's the first time I've ever given that presentation. So
there's a question here from Jason. He goes, isn't the idea that the currently ultimately is to never be redeemed?
For a self-issued currency?
Yeah, that's Corey's question. Just, again, the question is, isn't the idea that the currency ultimately is to never be redeemed?
Well, I mean, there's a benefit to it not being redeemed, in that, of course, you don't have to do any work. But the downside on that is you're not developing relationships for long term. If your people are accepting it from you and they're never redeeming it, well, eventually they're not going to accept from you anymore, and you're gonna burn it. You're gonna burn it out. You're gonna burn out your own reputation. So, and to get started, someone's not going to take a lot from you if they're smart, which most people are smart enough not to get ripped off that easily. They're going to take like one note from you as like a sample, and then when they come to redeem it with you, it's like they're testing you. And they're going to see if they should take a little more next time. So over time, you develop a relationship, and that's the way your life is going to be based. It's going to be based on your relationships with people. So, in my opinion, the goal is to develop relationships with this currency.
Yeah, I think it's good to think of when you're issuing like a market stamp type currency. Basically, they call that mutual credit when it becomes like on a virtual system. There's a virtual system called time banks, or LETs, local electronic trade system. That's LETs. That is mutual credit. So a way to think of it is, let's say we all started off with an account where there was 0, and I wanted to get something from Corey, so I'm hiring Corey. Corey does karaoke, and I wanted to hire him for my deal tomorrow. Well, let's say, just to make this really easy, let's say he charges 10 hours for that. That's roughly $100 in the Mountain Hour system. So what would happen then is my account, because I made a purchase from Corey, is my account, and this is all electronic, and this is a system that's been around for almost 30 years or so right now. So that's a LETS system. So my account would go negative 10 hours. Corey's account would go positive 10. All right? But now I make marketing videos, and Corey wants to advertise and make a marketing video for his karaoke company. So I say to Corey, well, that's, depending upon how involved that is, but typically that's $200. So that would be 20 hours. So Corey goes, it's good. I'll get more customers. It's all good. So now Corey, we now have another exchange. Corey's account now goes from being 10 positive to 10 negative. And then my account, which was 10 negative, goes to 10 positive. And then so I don't have to be positive. I can make another purchase even though my account is negative, and that's how that works in a mutual credit system, as similar to time banks or Let's. Anthony McShell's has a mutual credit system. So it's really simple. The only difference, that's an electronic version of what Corey is describing, and Corey, did you? Henry, did you have any other questions?
No, I was just wondering how that worked. Thanks.
Does that make sense with the way I was describing it with a Let's system?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It makes it more understandable, but that at the base core of money, as I was showing in the beginning of the introduction, is that money is an IOU. This is essential that everybody memorize this. Memorize this for the rest of your life, because then you will never be deceived by the bankers again. Got some background music there. I had to mute Corey out for a second. But anyway, one barter equals 2 IOUs. One barter equals 2 IOUs. So irrespective of anything that is ever traded in ever, we make an agreement. As soon as you shake hands, you have agreed to exchange something. So, for instance, Henry has a book called Run with the Vision. I have a book called Our Money Jubilee. Henry, would you trade your book for my book?
Sure.
Here's Henry's reply. Are you agree that's a fair trade? Okay.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
All right. Well, Henry, would you please write out an IOU? So, I'm just doing this right now. I owe you. So I sign my name. I owe Henry a copy of my book, which is digital, by the way, right? Henry does the same thing. Well, everybody's seeing this is really simple, because it's, I don't want to belabor the point, but it's really simple. I can email this IOU and put it in an email and then send it to Henry. Well, we just exchanged IOUs. Then Henry could take my IOU and say, okay, I want to redeem the IOU and I want the book. Well, that's all a barter is, and that's the basis. These pieces of paper, this is a market stamp. But we don't have to write it down. We can just do it verbally. A verbal contract is still an IOU. So that's, when I was in, I always use this analogy, when I was in, just starting to like girls and everything, is I didn't have any money. I was broke. So what does a broke guy do? He gets resourceful, right? Necessity is the mother of all invention. I didn't know nothing about money then, but I would, for my girl for her birthday, I would write, hey, and I'd put this in a card, I owe you a back rub. Well, I was issuing money to my sweetheart then, right, in middle school, right? So that's as simple as what money is. It's very, very simple. We've just been deceived in Babylon. We've been in Babylonian confusion for so long that we just don't know what's up. So we're going to have to say goodbye to Corey. We're at 6:22. Corey, I just wanted to say goodbye. I appreciate your presentation. It was awesome. Hold on, I got him on mute. I got to unmute it. You know what, Corey? The button's not working right. So thanks for showing up. It was a great presentation. There we go. The sound just went. Just final words.
Yeah, I just want to say thanks for the opportunity to speak and just to give this presentation. It helped me out personally just to get everything straightened out, and I came up with this analogy. So just thanks a lot.
Yeah, it's the very beginning of it. Corey's a passionate guy like all of us. Once you wake up to this evil system, we get upset. And we're going to show a little video here and go to Henry's presentation. Here we go. So that was a guy. We were having a protest at the Federal Reserve. We're actually taking the Ark of the Covenant. Literally, we rebuilt the Ark of the Covenant. We are carrying it around the Federal Reserve office in Denver, and we were just videoing different people. And he was that homeless dude. I don't even know his name. And like that's the Spirit of the Lord coming through him. And he just had a poem that was just perfect. And we're going to move over talking about, Henry's presentation is about how we're getting punked again and how the bankers engineer wars because they finance people. You know, in order to be president in the United States, you got to get financed by the bankers. Well, it's the same in any nation for all the time. Well, these banking elite engineer wars. So they'll do good things in order to curry favor, but the confidence men have to do good things in order to trick us. So Henry's going to be talking about how Putin, the leader of the Russian nation, is deceiving us. So take it away, Henry.
Yeah, okay, I have a presentation. I'll just get my screen active here. Just hang on a second.
No problem. Take your time. I'm going to jump back into the chat room. We back up on questions here and again, so I got to jump back in here to catch up as well. So basically, the premise is that Putin is because he's destroying ISIS, it appears that he's protecting the Christians, and he's more Christian than Obama. But it's all theater. You got to think of professional wrestling. The end result is that the devil wants to destroy all of creation. So whenever you have entities which are advocating war or military responses that are doing something other than Jesus Christ, right? If they're doing things that aren't in accordance to the perfect law of liberty, then you're going to have destruction, and that's what the devil wants, and that's why the devil finds them. You got it, Henry?
Yeah, I think so. Okay, let's just see. Go screen share. Here we go.
All right, take it away.
Okay. Okay, so we're going to talk about war, and you know, everybody thinks we're heading into World War III, and really, that's what the bankers would like. I mean, when they get desperate, their goal is to start a war to distract us, or to, you know, keep their control. But here's one of my favorite Bible verses, and it says, "Where there is no vision, the people perish, but he who keeps the law, happy is he." And you know, when the Bible talks about vision, it's talking about prophetic vision, understanding the word and the will of God. And I'm going to talk a bit about law, you know. Like God's law is perfect, and he created the whole creation to be shared among all of us. And his will is to establish the kingdom of heaven on earth. Now, you remember in the book of Daniel, the King Nebuchadnezzar had this dream that troubled him, where he saw a statue with a head of gold, arms and chest of silver, you know, torso of brass or bronze, and legs of iron. And it was revealed that this was a system, like when Daniel interpreted the dream, he said to King Nebuchadnezzar, "You are this head of gold." In other words, God has given you all power over the earth, and after you will come these other kingdoms, and the different parts of the idol symbolized, like the Greek, well, Persia, silver was Persia, the brass was the Greeks, and the iron was Rome. And but at the end of this dream, it said that a kingdom will, the stone kingdom will arise, that will not be man-made, it will not be cut out by hand, and it will smite the statue. Okay, in the dream, this stone came and smashed the statue, and this refers to the whole beast empires that carry the lineage of Babylon, that they will be destroyed when God accomplishes His purpose against Babylon. And I really believe that we are at that time. We are now at the end of the beast empires. Okay, and so we are inheriting a kingdom. And Jesus said, "Fear not, little flock. It is the Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom." And we really need to have an understanding of that. Now, besides the Babylonian system of usury, which was carried through all these successive empires, we had the rising of several other beasts. In the book of Revelation, it talks about the beast from the sea and the beast from the earth. And the beast from the earth was the money power. And in 1743, Mayer Amschel Bauer, an Ashkenazi Jew, was born in Frankfurt, Germany, the son of Moses Amschel Bauer, a moneylender and the proprietor of a counting house. And during the 1760s, the Rothschild family began lending money, not to businesses, but they began lending money to countries, to princes, to principalities, to princes, and Rothschild, Bauer changed his name from Bauer to Rothschild after the red hexagram, or sign, his father had placed over the entrance door to their counting house, and it means red shield. Now, Rothschild began a business relationship with Prince William IX, and he discovered that loaning money to governments was much more profitable. Plus, the government could exact taxes to ensure that he would be paid. And so the Rothschilds bragged that they controlled Britain's money supply. They controlled the British Empire. But then that means also they financed the slave trade. They financed the Opium Wars. Okay, and they became very powerful by loaning to governments. Now, talking about war, I just want to jump for a few minutes to Albert Pike and Masonry. Okay, Albert Pike was a 33rd degree Mason, one of the founders of Masonry in the United States, and he was also a leader in the Ku Klux Klan, and he was a Satan worshiper. And in 1871, he wrote to Mazzini, a co-conspirator, about a vision that he had of 3 world wars that were necessary to bring about the one world order. Now, the first war, he said, must be fought to permit the Illuminati to overthrow the power of the czars in Russia, to establish communism, and this will be a war fought between the British and German empires. Then the Second World War would be fomented by taking advantage of the differences between the fascists and the Zionists. So even at this point, in 1871, he was using the word fascism and Zionism. And he said the goal of the Second World War would be to institute a sovereign state of Israel in Palestine and strengthen communism in Russia until the final cataclysm, which he said would be World War III, which would be a war between the Zionists and the leaders of the Islamic world. And his goal, he said that all religions would be destroyed except the true religion of the worship of Lucifer. So here you had a Mason who was advocating 3 world wars, and 2 of them have come to pass exactly as he predicted. Now, we have a lot of people who are afraid of the end times, and a lot of this fear comes from false doctrines that are in the Scofield Reference Bible. Now, Cyrus Scofield was a convicted felon who came up with this idea of writing a Bible with commentary. And he was backed by one of the founders of the Federal Reserve, promoted Scofield. And Scofield, you know, prior to this time, like the King James Bible was just only the verses, the chapters and the verses. And Scofield came up with a commentary in which he invented the rapture, and he also added a lot of other Zionist ideas that were not in the original. And for example, the verse in Genesis where it says, where God said to Abraham that through you all the families of the earth would be blessed. In a Scofield Bible, there's an annotation that says, to commit the sin of anti-Semitism will curse any nation. So this was the Bible written by the Zionists at the very beginning of the 20th century. So I'm just showing you a history of the bankers and their control. In 1913, in December, when the Federal Reserve Bill was passed, if you notice, who are the private banks that own the Federal Reserve? Okay, this is supposed to be a partnership between the banks and the government of the United States. Notice that you have the Rothschild Bank, the Warburg Bank of Hamburg, another Rothschild Bank, Kuhn Loeb Bank of New York, Israel Moses Saif Banks of Italy, Goldman Sachs, Chase Manhattan Bank. So here you have the United States government turning over its finances to these foreign bankers who then funded World War I, and they came up with this propaganda. I mean, World War I was fought between families, European families. You know, the Queen of England and the Russian Tsar and the Germans were all intermarried. It was like a family feud. And yet now, with the Federal Reserve bankers making money available for the war effort and selling war bonds, suddenly their German cousins are mad brutes and beasts. And so here you have this whole beast system, okay, coming out, the whole propaganda demonizing other countries, other peoples. In 1915, the J.P. Morgan got 12 journalists together and said, okay, which are the most influential newspapers in America that we can buy so we can control the media? And they realized that it was only necessary to purchase 25 of them to gain control over the media. So here the banking interests got control of the corporate media. Then we'll jump a little further ahead to 1917, the Balfour Declaration. Now remember, there was a movie, let's see, what was it? It was this, forget the name, okay? Lawrence of Arabia. Okay, at the end of World War I, Britain had an agreement with the Arabs for their help in overthrowing the Ottoman Empire, and said they would help establish an Arab state in Palestine. But at the same time, the British made an agreement with Rothschild that they would establish a Jewish state. And so the British had conflicting agreements with both the Arabs and the Jews. And so this is really the root of the conflict between the Jews and the Arabs. Jacob Schiff, who was head of Kuhn Loeb Bank in New York, financed the Russian Revolution. And he also arranged, this is alleged by Henry Makow, that it was Jacob Schiff who gave the order to kill the family, the Tsar's family in Russia. So you have these powerful banking interests gaining control of the United States currency, funding World War I, funding the Zionist movement, funding communism. And it's funny that in the 1930s, a few years after the Federal Reserve System came into power, that America was in a depression, the bankers basically put the United States through bankruptcy procedures. And there was no money for anything, but suddenly, when there's a war, there was all this money available. And the bankers financed all sides. Now, even Adolf Hitler, who was another beast, some people think that he was an anti-usury champion. But he used the issue of anger directed against the Jewish usurers, but he did not outlaw usury itself. He just used that to gain power, and then he had his own usury banking system established in Germany to gain power for himself and to build up armaments for war. So the bankers are all intertwined with war. And they'll loan to every side. And so that's something you have to understand, is that the whole system, it was right in Babylon in ancient times, the Babylonian priesthood would invent religions, different religions for the different conquered peoples to set them against each other. Well, the Bible is clear that Babylon will fall. And I believe that we are at that point now. In 2007, 2008, the monetary system basically unraveled. And no matter what, it's kind of like that little, the kids' song about Humpty Dumpty sat on the wall, Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men won't put Babylon together again. And it's falling. The whole system is very unstable. But the thing is, we have a kingdom. We are inheriting a kingdom. And in the story of Babylon's fall in the Old Testament, and there was Darius the Mede and Cyrus the Persian who came and overthrew Babylon. Now, Darius the Mede and Cyrus the Persian were not Jewish, they were not Christians, they were not believers, but yet God used them to overthrow Babylon. And today we see the kings of the East, China and Russia, rising up against the Western arrangement of Babylon, which has been supreme up till now. Now, I'm not saying that China and Russia are totally righteous, but God will use anyone. And at this point, I just see this not as the total fall of Babylon, but this is one of the signs of the beginning. Now, a lot of people think that, great, let's start World War III. They have no idea what World War III would be. We're talking about an atomic holocaust. You have all this propaganda. You have America with its bases surrounding Russia, claiming that Russia wants to start war. Well, I think Putin does not want war. However, he's not a total psychopath, unlike a lot of the American branch of Babylon. Okay, so you have people like McCain, you have President Obama funding radical Islam to try to destabilize Russia and to try to create, they have created chaos in all these different countries. And I think that Putin is less of a psychopath. At least he's honest. I believe that he's standing up for Russia's interests as he sees it. However, we know, and there's a site called Dear President Putin, in which people from all the world are writing to him saying, thank you for bombing the rebels in Syria. Okay? So a lot of people look at Putin as a savior. Well, he's a disruptor, I'll put it that way, but he's not a savior. Okay? I think he's honest in his own efforts to try to do what's good for Russia. However, Russia still has a usury-backed banking system. And so Putin is not the savior of the world. Okay? Now, let's get back to the law. You know, it says, he who keeps the law, happy is he. There will never, ever be a system or a country or a world in which people develop to their full capacity unless this usury system is overthrown. Now, the system is disintegrating, but that doesn't mean things won't get worse unless we get a hold of God's laws, and that means we operate lawfully. Now, Jesus said that he was a king, and he has a kingdom, and that we can enter into this kingdom. And I think we really need to grasp a hold of that, take our eyes off this whole move to war, efforts to keep destabilizing things, you know, crisis capitalism, and recognize that who we are. And you know, here's something I want you to think about. Jesus is called the mediator, our mediator. And it says one of his functions is to be our mediator to the Father. And this is an illustration showing a judge in a court. And you know, we have a lot of power. And particularly, you remember, let's go back to Abraham. Remember, Abraham interceded. And you could say it's kind of like, let's talk about warfare here. You know, people think that in war, what we need to do is just go out in the battlefield and fight the enemy. But really, are we obeying the law or are we not by doing this? Something that I've recently discovered, and other people, other Christians, have recently discovered is the whole idea of the court of heaven, in which we can petition the Father, we can petition Father God to enforce his law. And, you know, Jesus said, I do nothing but what I see my Father doing. Okay, Jesus operated totally out of love. He did not come to bomb, you know, like Putin is bombing Syria. God knows that country has seen enough bombs dropped on it already. How much more bombing can they stand? There will be nobody there. But you know, we can come, and this is why I think the whole concept of this 144K is very important. Now, I hope this makes sense. So I'll just get back to Abraham again. Remember, God said in Genesis, there's this story of God about to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. And he says, but first I'll talk to Abraham. Now, did God need permission from Abraham to do that? No. But God went to Abraham and said, what do you think? And Abraham said, well, if there are 50 righteous, in other words, Abraham was acting as an intercessor or as a defense attorney, saying to God, why don't you spare Sodom and Gomorrah if there's 50 righteous there? And God said, and then he said, eventually it got down to 10. Now the number 10 in the Hebrew was considered like a legal quorum or a minimum group of elders to make a legal decision. And you know, we have the power I mean, we know what God's will is. We know that Babylon is judged, that usury is evil. We know the kind of society that we desire, and this is God's will. And as a group, we have power when we come into agreement to make declarations. The thing is we have to be righteous. We have to operate from love and a proper spirit, but we can agree with the heavenly court. Okay, so we are a nation. We are a royal priesthood. We have power, and we can say, okay, God, this is our situation. And as a group, and we need to be like-minded in one spirit, say, okay, this is what we come into agreement with you to establish a usury-free system in the world. And we get the proper understanding, we communicate it in the right spirit, and it will happen because we are in agreement with the judge. And once the verdict, and I'm going to go into this in another presentation. This is just at my initial understanding. But part of the reason of getting a tribe together is not just to agitate, but to be like God's legal representatives on earth to see His kingdom come to pass. And so with that understanding, we can be effective. We can issue decrees because we're doing what God says. We're operating from the proper spirit, and this is what I think what is real, true spiritual warfare.
Are you back? There you go.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, we got 10 minutes. I'm going to play a quick video, and we'll get Henry back on to answer any questions. Here. So I wanted to bring up a point that that kind of encapsulates what Henry's presentation, which I want to thank Henry so much for creating these, because it takes a lot of work to put a PowerPoint together, to have it impactful and well researched. And what happens when you get into history is that we get divided and conquered, and we get caught up in isms like communism and fascism and moral relativism. So because you see these beheadings going on in Syria, your soul gets enraged and you want to do something, and the theater is that the president isn't doing anything, and Putin, the great gladiator, he's coming in and acting like a macho man, and so that's all moral relativism, right? Well, God's perfect law of liberty says, no, this is what you do. If you're truly free, the people are living in the kingdom of heaven. But we because we live in Babylon and we're so starved to truly be free, we see little bits of it. So some people get caught up in Ron Paul, or they get caught up in Bernie Sanders, and so they tell you a little bit of truth, but Bernie Sanders isn't abolishing usury. Ron Paul, the capitalist, wasn't abolishing usury. So it's important that you use, Jesus said, I am the truth, I am the life, I am the way. No one gets to the kingdom except through me, and it is the narrow gate. All other ways lead to destruction, and that's what's going on. It's all destruction in Babylon. So, Henry, what do you think, if you comment on that moral relativism concept?
Well, the weapons of our warfare are not physical. They are primarily spiritual, and they are rational in that we have to awaken people's souls to the truth. So, this whole, to try to fit things into a national, we can't understand things totally from a nationalistic perspective or from an egotistical perspective. We are one. We really are. And, God's will is that everyone, his command is to develop our talents. And then that's for everybody, the believer and the non-believer. And we need to show the way. But yeah, this whole, I can understand people. Wow, there's your kid. Beautiful.
We're getting ready to sign off. I don't mean to upstage you.
No problem.
But there's no questions in there. I just, at what Henry was basically saying is that, do you want your children, if you live in Syria, just imagine we lived, the listeners here, that we lived in Syria. Do you feel a whole lot better that your country is being destroyed by the West? They basically, it's kind of like, think of the proxy war in Vietnam. They had communism versus capitalism having a proxy war in Vietnam. What was the net result of it? Millions of Vietnamese were killed. And that was the net result. So these are all just proxy wars, and they're not just between nations, they're between the Democrats and the Republicans, and we have to stop falling for these cult of personalities and getting divided and conquered. And the Bible says, God says to us, seek ye first the kingdom. Pursue the kingdom. Don't pursue men and do things men's ways, because then everything turns into moral relativism, and we're led to destruction. The mission of the 144K, it says they're virgins, which doesn't mean they're sexual virgin. It means that we want to become perfected in God's laws. And because what that does, it creates the kingdom. And, I'm going to bring up my son here. At the beginning of the presentation, we showed the motivation, and that gentleman was singing, and he sang for his what? Initially he's singing for, amazing grace, how sweet the sound. And then when he was asked to see, well, what's the reason why you're singing that? Well, it's because he had hardship, and that's when his soul power came out. And his soul power came out. Well, my soul was built, designed, and engineered by the Creator to emancipate humanity. I feel like when God speaks to me, He requires me to be like a modern Moses. And that takes a lot of work, because you get rejection, and nobody, it's difficult to get traction. And Henry's the same way. You can just tell the people that that God speaks to them, because you can see it in the fruit of their works. And I want my child to grow up in the kingdom of heaven. He's not a debt slave. And currently on planet Earth, there's only two groups of people. There's debtors and creditors. And the way the creditors win is because they trick us into that there's these things called countries, which is an illusion. God didn't put all these lines on the map. And by getting caught up in all these political divisions and racial divisions and sexual division, man versus woman, and all those isms are just proxy wars, because the bankers, I mean, literally, if you think of currently, right now, the usurers simultaneously finance the United States military, they finance the politicians, the war machine. Simultaneously, they finance the peace movement, which when Obama was elected, the peace movement just went away, and they start just giving Nobel Peace Prize awards to the president, just like Hitler was Time Man of the Year 1 or 2 times in the 30s. So they build these guys up, and going on, the usurers also finance the radical, violent Muslim agent provocateurs like ISIS. So they're literally engineering conflict, and we all pick a team. Oh, I'm for ISIS, and that makes me for, I'm supporting Putin or whatever. Like, whatever group you pick, you're picking the users. The users end up becoming, they win no matter what. We are under the curse of the money lenders from Deuteronomy 28:43. Well, I don't want my child to be under a curse. I want him to have all of the blessings that the Creator has promised us. The Creator of the heavens and the earth makes perfection. Like, it's just perfect. Like, he's a week old, and my wife's body is just being re-engineered so that she can nurse a child. It just happens. The grand engineer that made everything engineered a perfect economic system. He engineered a perfect law of liberty. However, it never gets taught in the churches. It never gets taught in the schools. There's no university that you can go on planet Earth to learn God's perfect law of liberty. And I just wanted to sign off with that as a motivation. You have beautiful children, and you're beautiful souls yourself. We've been beaten down like that horse in the beginning of the presentation that's tied to a chair, that we have to get past all of these false prophets, these false solutions, and realize that it's time for the kingdom of heaven. It's the time for the fulfillment of prophecy. And I'm going to turn it over to Henry for final comments. Any thoughts, Henry?
Wayne, your child is beautiful, and he deserves to grow up in freedom, usury freedom, freedom from usury.
Yes, thank you. And we all do. Everybody deserves that. It's just that the longer we live in Babylon, it's like we become. I think there's a good analogy to be made. During the Civil War era, prior to it, there is a lady named Harriet Tubman who was a former slave, and she set up the Underground Railroad, and she was called Moses. And she has a famous quote that goes, I freed 1,000 slaves, and I could have freed 1,000 more if they knew that they were slaves. So even under the harsh conditions of chattel slavery, where they had chains and whips and they're getting beat down, they were so, they thought less than of themselves. They thought they deserved to be slaves, and that they were, because they were black, they thought that they deserved to be slaves, that it really wasn't slavery. So I thank you, Henry, for coming on. I wanted to thank all the attendees, and that's a shout out to Charles M., Jason, Chris, Pat, Rosanna, Jerry, and please keep turning into this. And as I said in the beginning of the broadcast, if you can share these links for these videos, God made a promise. This isn't my promise. God made a promise that if my people who are called by my name seek my face, and they stop being so sinful, I will heal their land. He guarantees it. This is prophecy. History is prophecy. What happened in the past will happen in the future. Revelation is our story for the regathering of the tribes and how we get our act together and emancipate humanity, because of great people like Henry Garman, great people like Corey K. Peterson, and great people like yourself that sit through this is the true happy hour, and people aren't drinking and carousing. They're here. So my son, my wife, thank you for caring about this issue and be willing to take a leap of faith. And it's time for the Jubilee. It's time for the emancipation of all humanity.
Yes, it is.
All right. Well, I'm signing off. We're exactly 2 hours. We're trying to keep these 2 hours long so that we can take care of the baby and have family time. Good night, everyone. Thank you, Henry. You're
good night, Wayne.
a beautiful love revolutionary, all of you.
Yeah, good night.